Okay, so we're just going to get started now. So hello everyone, my name is Alice Graham and I'm just here to host this webinar today on the Construction Playbook. So we're going to be joined by Hannah Evans from Atkins Realis, formerly known as Faithful in Gold, and she's going to be giving us a rundown of the Construction Playbook and how it relates to the projects that we deliver in the construction industry. So I'm just going to give a brief intro of Hannah. So Hannah is a director at Atkins Realis. She's worked for over 15 years delivering various government agency type of projects, and she has a wealth of experience of public sector procurement. And we're just going to hear from her how we can make use of the construction playbook and have an understanding of the frameworks that are used in this sector. So I'll just hand over to Hannah to start the webinar. And just a reminder that if any of you have any questions, you can post them in the Q&A chat below, and we'll be able to go through the Q&A at the end with those questions. So I'll just now hand over to Hannah to start us off with the webinar. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Alice. Yeah, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today to present on the construction playbook and how to apply it in practice so that you can set up projects for success. So thanks again for having me. It's lovely to see you all. The presentation will take around 20 minutes today, and Alice is going to kindly leave sort of 5-10 minutes at the end for questions. So I'll just move on to the next screen. Lovely. So we're going to start with a quick overview of the construction playbook. The playbook was first published in December 2020 with a version 1.1 in September 2022. And it provides best practice government guidance containing 14 key policies aimed at transforming how we procure, assess and manage public sector projects and programmes. It drives key initiatives and government agenda, and that includes building safety, social, environmental and economic outcomes, productivity, particularly through the use of modern methods of construction, and of course BIM and information management. And in the opening pages of the playbook, it really does promote a right from the start approach. So even citing that old saying, to fail to plan is to plan to fail. But typically, when new policy emerges, we have a tendency to think it's yet another piece of guidance to adopt. We don't have the time. We don't feel open to change. We think that we're doing it already, or what I'm doing now is fine. And with the construction playbook in particular, interestingly, it's mandated for government departments. So broader public sector bodies may feel that it's just not applicable for them. But if we look at the current market landscape, never has it been more important to apply that best practice policy. Times are incredibly challenging. We've got an upcoming election, which can create new budgets and new priorities. We've got geopolitical events such as the Russia-Ukraine war, which resulted in soaring energy costs. We were hit with a global pandemic, which at the time seemed never ending, and we've been on the brink of recession. And what we're seeing from all of this is inflation, currency fluctuations, increased labour costs and constraints around labour and skills availability. There's increased material costs and limited availability of certain materials. And all this in turn is, disrupting supply chains and impacting resilience. And finally, we are seeing changes to the regulatory environment. So, examples include the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, Building Safety Bill, and the upcoming Procurement Reform Bill as well. And of course, all of this then has an impact on the projects and programs that we deliver, which I know, many of us will have experienced over the last few years. We have delays and tighter budgets despite increased costs. We've got a lack of clarity on where to maximise value, and scopes can decrease. And as a result, innovation and collaboration can become stifled. And there's also a greater chance of insolvency and dispute in an uncertain climate. And what I wanted to highlight today is that, staying in your comfort zone doing what you've always done can really limit you to mitigate against those impacts. It can limit you in maximising outcomes that truly align to organisational strategy as well as alignment to national agenda. You know, there's always this misconception that a change in approach can equates to an increased workload. There's too much upheaval and pain in change, and we simply don't have the time. But in actual fact, the short-term investment in time to take action takes away the longer term pain of not actually getting it right. So for me, this image by, it's an American therapist called Phil Stutz, clearly depicts that staying in your comfort zone and doing what you've always done will mean you're trapped in a small world of limited possibility. But if you are open to change, if you are open to that upfront investment in time, and if you apply some simple prompts against the 14 key policies of the playbook, you can set projects and programs up for success, and you can mitigate against those market impacts and drive improved outcomes. So let's take a few policies from the playbook and apply some of the logical prompts that you might want to ask yourself or a client. So if we start with the policy of early supply chain involvement, a simple sample prompt against this might be, you know, has my client published their commercial pipeline and engaged early with the market? And this might be that 18-month look ahead that departments publish on their gov.uk website, or they may have held a series of market engagement webinars to share an upcoming programme of work. And there are departments that do this. So if that investment in time has been made and the answer to this prompt is yes, then the organisation can expect a diverse market that understands requirements and priorities and is able to respond to tenders. Improved collaboration. So I work with one government department who are an exemplar in market engagement, and having attended their initial market engagement sessions for a particular programme, I could see all the suppliers coming together to inform the commercial strategy for how that programme was structured. The supply chain were very collaborative and transparent in the process of what they could and couldn't achieve as well. We've then got improved innovation. So if the supply chain know what to expect, they're more likely to plan and invest in it and come up with creative solutions that benefit organisations in the longer term. And it also minimises disputes. So if you work together with your suppliers and are on the same page from the outset with regards to requirements and quality, you know, and you ensure that clear and fair risk allocation, you're certainly less likely to experience disputes throughout a programme. So these are just some of the sample benefits of applying early supply chain involvement. The second sample policy we'll look at is harmonising, digitising and rationalising demand. So a sample prompt an organisation might want to ask themselves is, have I considered ways to maximise the use of off-site and modern methods of constructions? So some organisations might not even consider this because they think that the programme isn't suited to MMC. So this could be, for example, a programme where there's lots of fit out or refurbishment work as opposed to new builds. But actually, you know, there are opportunities to increase pre-manufactured values on programmes. You know, if we look at the work, say, NG Bailey have done in developing repeatable Cat A M&E modules for pipework, fan coil units, lighting, acoustic ceilings and ductwork, you know, this is possible. And if you prompt yourself at the start of a programme, the opportunity then isn't lost. So what are the benefits of applying this? Well, we can expect to see an increase in productivity and efficiency across a project or programme where you're using those standardised and repeatable approaches. And that in turn will make those tighter budgets go further and support mitigation against those inflationary.
Apologies, I think we might be having some technical issues on Hannah's end. We'll just check in with her quickly. Please just bear with us. We're just going to try and resolve the technical issue we're having. I think nobody can hear Hannah just now. So just bear with us a second. Okay, I think we're facing some technical issues at this point, but we'll give it 5 minutes for Hannah to be able to log back into the call. So if you just bear with us in the background, and we'll be back on and just resolve the issues.
Alice, I'm
Okay,
back.
yeah. Oh, cool. That's great.
I don't know
Fantastic.
what
We just
happened
lost
there.
you there.
Don't
I think
worry.
must have been the internet. So yeah, please go ahead and
Yeah, sorry,
reset
everybody.
yourself up. Thank you.
So the final sample policy that I'd like to touch on today is that of outcome-based approaches. And as I said, this is one of my personal favourites because there's a real opportunity for us, to make a difference, not only to organisations, but to broader society as well. So sample prompts you might use to check compliance with this policy is, have I engaged with the relevant stakeholders to develop a corporate set of outcome drivers, which could then be filtered down and tweaked for particular projects and programs. And the benefits of applying this policy are multiple, but some examples are: one, it supports in demonstrating value to the public purse. It's great for feeding back into the business case revisited, particularly when looking at the cost benefit analysis as part of the economic case. It can really support local communities. So you might look at an outcome that drives local employment and skills, for example. And it can also support environmental outcomes as well, such as targeting net zero and climate adaptation. And of course, in driving all of those outcomes, it boosts our economy. So for me, never has there been a more important time to adopt an outcome-based approach. And I'd highly recommend the adoption of the value toolkit to drive that approach as well. And to be honest, I could do a whole other session on that alone. So my advice would be, in sort of applying the construction playbook, practically, is to develop some prompts against the 14 key policies of the playbook. Because once you do, you can start to really test where you or organisations sit against them. And this will help you understand where, a change in approach might be required and might drive improved outcomes. So we've actually developed a compliance tool. This is a dummy dashboard for a dummy organisation. And it shows where this organisation sits against the 14 key policies. And in the top left-hand corner, you've got your RAG against each of the policies, your red, amber, green of where the organisation sits against them. To the right-hand side, you have your high sensitivity non-compliances. So for example, if you're an amber or red against a policy, and if in not applying that policy, you're likely to fail in achieving your outcomes, then this will be flagged as a high sensitivity non-compliance. And it will give you a bit of an opportunity in a prompt to consider if a change in approach might be needed. So just as an example, if you took the policy of effective contracting, you're an amber or a red because you aren't embedding KPIs into your contracts that drive your corporate outcome drivers. Well, of course, the sensitivity analysis on achieving outcomes is going to be flagged as high if you're not achieving that. So the change in approach that you might make might be that you want to consider embedding KPIs across your contracts that will support in driving those outcomes. And then to the bottom left, you'll see the project radar. And what you want here is a sort of full spider's web, you know, and full greens across the board to say, yeah, I'm applying this policy in the correct way. But what I would say is, you know, there is an option to explain as well under the playbook. It does recognise that there's, you know, they've got that comply or explain mandate. It does recognise there isn't necessarily, you know, a one size fits all, and you might need to steer away from a policy for whatever reason. And the next slide shows some recommendations we pulled together using the tool. This has been redacted, but you'll see here some of the high level recommendations this organisation receives, such as, you know, confirming appropriate conflict avoidance provisions as standard clauses in contracts, ensuring that they're consistently applying the minimum standard of testing to better understand financial risk of suppliers, and that'll safeguard their projects, and also looking at ways, as I said earlier, to maximise pre-manufactured values across a programme. So it really is helpful to paint a picture on the levels of compliance. And before we close, I just want to touch on an exemplar case study, which is the MOJ's new prison programme, where they were looking to achieve 6,500 prison places across 4 new prisons. And this is a great case study. It's available online from the Cabinet Office, and it's embedded in their guidance on early supply chain involvement. There's some fantastic guidance out there that can be used to apply all of these policies. And I'll share a link to this particular guidance and that case study at the end of the session. But in essence, MOJ applied key playbook principles when, you know, commencing this programme. That included, but isn't limited to, publishing their commercial pipeline, market health and capability assessments, early supply chain involvement and delivery model assessments. And it's worth noting that that market engagement took place, I think it was a 10-month period with over 19, you know, market engagement sessions and events, and that included webinars and one-to-ones. So they really took that upfront investment in time seriously. And through the market engagement, MOJ identified that the market was very fragile, with skilled worker shortages and constrained supply chains, mostly caused through EU exit and COVID. But they used this intelligence and the programme itself as an opportunity to support, you know, economic recovery and to boost that market confidence. And the outcomes and benefits were and are multiple. You know, they had an engaged market that were ready to respond and rise to the challenge of the programme. They improved supplier experience because supply chain felt they were part of the journey, and that, you know, they informed the decisions and structure of the programme. Collaboration was boosted because of the engagement, and also once they got into the programme, because now the suppliers are working together as an alliance and are incentivized through contractual KPIs, and they work together to look at ways to reduce risk and create opportunity. And the application of the playbook policy, you know, has informed decision making for the programme as well, you know, as well as the commercial strategy. And ultimately, it's created long-term sustainable relationships. You know, it takes a long time to build a prison. I think the case study references the aim of 5.5 years as opposed to the typical 7 to 8. So this engagement collaboration has really, really supported that. So to conclude, remember, Phil Stutz, you know, take a step out of your comfort zone, because it will create endless possibilities. Don't simply adopt the familiar when undertaking your projects and programs and assume that there aren't any broader benefits of applying policy and principles. You know, make that upfront investment in time to explore where you sit against the 14 key policies. It doesn't take that long. You know, I've worked with a number of departments now, you know, a couple of hours for workshops. And if you do, I can guarantee you will identify some opportunities to make some tweaks that will safeguard you, that will help deliver those improved outcomes and support collaboration and innovation along the way as well. And that's it. Alice, thank you. Apologies for losing my connection partway through there.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, I think there was a lot of insights from what you were talking about. So I'll just remind the participants that you can post any questions that you have within the Q&A section so that Hannah can take them. So yeah, just a reminder for anyone who joined on later on in the call, just to say that this is one of the Cambridge Forum for the Construction Industry webinars. So I think I'll just start off with a question for yourself, Hannah.
Thanks, Alice. Thank you.
So what direct impact does the playbook have on, say, smaller organizations and businesses, say, for example, where we are in Cambridge, whereby there's, small practices that might be impacted by the 14 policies that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question. For me, the playbook it can be applied to, by smaller organisations. It can be applied to smaller projects and programmes. I think that the approach to applying it just has to be proportionate to, the project or programme that you are delivering. But I think that just developing, having a look at the playbook, having a look at those, key areas of policy, and just having a think about, right, what are the prompts that could apply to my client and could apply to this project and program, will really just help set up those projects right from the start. And it can be, you can sort of look at things retrospectively and look at ways to improve those projects that are already in motion. But I think that it's such a great piece and simple piece of guidance to follow, I think, for any size of organisation. But as I say, apply it when in proportion to the project or programme that you're delivering.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So we've got a few questions that have popped up in the Q&A. So I'll just start with the first one that said, do you see local authorities taking up the playbook?
So, I mean, I think I sort of alluded to this at the start. That there may be the construction playbook was mandated for central government departments. So, as I said at the start, broader public sector may not think that it's applicable to them. But for me, and it probably reiterating my last point, I think it's a great way to set projects and programs up for success. And I think if done in the right way, it can be adopted by any organization. And I think it's a real positive step in the right direction to get those things right from the start.
Okay, yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I hope that answers that particular question. The next one was about the construction playbook and client requests. So they're asking, they've come across clients requesting an analysis of how companies are applying the construction playbook. In particular, have you come across public sector clients that are using the construction playbook actively?
Yeah, I mean, the dashboards that are presented there, they're redacted, but they are, that they are clients that we have, worked with previously. We have got public sector organisations, mostly government departments, that are applying the playbook. And as I say, we've actually developed our own tool to sort of test and prompt where they sit against the 14 key policies, and undertaken an assessment and an analysis working with them, and then made recommendations, as I say, using the RAGs against the policies and the findings to help tweak approaches to drive improved delivery and outcomes across the projects and programs. So yes, there are organisations, there are departments that are actually using the playbook as part of their delivery.
Yep. Okay. And a further question linking into that then is here about does the introduction of the playbook mean that the UK government will be better organized at being a client? For example, publish a longer term pipeline of future work.
If they apply it, absolutely, definitely. I know I seem like I'm a big advocate for applying the policy, but yeah, if it is applied and if it is done correctly, then absolutely, I think it can really help drive productivity and efficiency in the way that we deliver major projects and programs. I think it's absolutely essential, though, that it is applied where possible from the outset. And I think, as I alluded to in my presentation, it might feel like a bit of pain to actually invest the time in doing that at commencement, but it is worth it in the longer term to get things right, from a cost and efficiency purpose, for sure.
Okay, brilliant. So I think that was all the questions that we had, unless does anyone else have any further questions before we come to the end of the webinar? I'll leave that in the chat. Yeah, okay. So thank you very much, Hannah, for giving us that talk through of the construction playbook. And I'm sure that if people wanted to hear a bit more about it, they'll be able to get in touch with yourself or search on the Atkins Realist website for more information. And as for us with this webinar, you can be able to go on the Cambridge Forum for the Construction Industry to find out more about our other events and connect with us on our LinkedIn page as well. There'll be more future events that we have in person, and also oh, sorry, I think there's a question here that's just popped up as well. I'll
Thanks,
take that
Alice.
before we end it. So we've got a question that says, is the playbook being incorporated into the training of QSs and PMs? If not, how can we accelerate familiarity?
So I don't know that it is actually being embedded into sort of training for PMs and QSs. I do know that there are contracts now that are giving reference to the use of the playbook and how it can be used at various stages of contract implementation. So JCT is a prime example of that. I mean, within our own organisation, we've facilitated webinars. I think for me, it would be, if you think about setting up a project from the start, I think for me, a key way to drive the playbook is to, embed it within the project brief. So actually have the key policies almost as a checklist, as a test at the start of a project to say, right, where do we sit against this policy? Have we considered application of this policy? And, how can we make sure it's embedded at the right points throughout the REBA stages? So for me, I think it should be used as sort of a best practice, almost briefing document at commencement of a project.
Yep. Okay. Cool, brilliant. I think that's probably the end of it. We won't be able to take any more questions, but thank you everyone once again for attending, and thank you, Hannah, for giving us that talk, and we'll see you again the next time. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Lovely. Thanks, Alice. Thank you, everybody. Bye.